For me, when you begin cutting away at the things that are unique and beautiful and really tell a complex story, then you're just on the path to sameness again.
Welcome to Superpower with Kristine Milkovich, the podcast where we help you unleash your inner hero. Whether you're a change maker, a trailblazer, or just looking to level up, this is the space to uncover your unique superpower and transform it into unstoppable momentum. Join me as we dive deep with inspiring guests, sharing their game-changing insights, empowering us all to be the hero of our own stories. Get ready to embrace your deepest purpose, own your power, and change the world one bold move at a time. Welcome to this episode of Superpower. We sat down with one of our local real estate leaders. Todd Shively wears multiple hats. He is the creator of a brand new, innovative, visionary co-op office in downtown Seattle called Ensemble. He has a legacy in this area of being a broker manager, a managing broker, a successful sales broker. He has built teams. He is on the cutting edge and the pulse of what's happening in the local real estate and national real estate market. I know you're going to get so much inspiration out of this episode. Well, this is going to be a very exciting episode today. I have been counting down the days and the hours and the minutes to bring our next guest on. I'm just going to lead with this before I introduce him. When you go to the website of his boutique brokerage brand in downtown Seattle, the very first line you will read is "different is delightful." And man, I think that sums up so much about this incredible human. Brokerage owner, designated broker, real estate legacy in Seattle, a mentor to so many. And we're just going to dive in and be inspired in this next 45 minutes and certainly hear some of my guest superpowers. So let's welcome Todd to the show. Hello.
Thank you, Kristine. It's good to be here.
Oh, it's so good to see you and hear you. I do lead every episode. I'm going to be consistent and I'm going to get my hand slapped to myself when I stop doing this. I lead with gratitude. You could be 7 million. And for this gentleman, that's no joke, 7 million different places supporting 500 million other people. So thank you so much for carving out this next 45 minutes to chat it up.
It's an absolute honor to be here with you. You should feel very proud of the fact that people are so excited to be here and be a part of your project.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Well, a couple things, Todd. Even though I know you, we live in the local area of Seattle, Washington, where we commingle and certain, personal and friendship communities. And we've had the great fortune of to even align on some business ventures. So that all being said, though, one of the taglines at Superpower is this show is intended for one reason and one reason only, is to spotlight, highlight, and talk to people that are changing it up, right? Whether it's like shaking it up, moving it up, changing it up, disrupting it up. Episode one of my guests, Sherry, total disruptor. And so you've been doing a little bit of that. I know your whole career, but notably the last couple years. So before we jump into Ensemble and this incredible, beautiful brand that you're building out down the road here in Seattle, take us on a little bit of a journey. Even for myself, I've actually never sat down with you and said, tell me your full coming out real estate story. So for those listening on the show that maybe have not had the honor and pleasure to meet you or certainly do business with you, how did you start in the real estate professional lane? And just give us a little 1, 2, 3 about your background.
I'm one of those people that unusually really wanted this since early days, elementary school days. I often tell the story about like the first book I remember reading in kindergarten about a couple getting their house ready to sell, and they fix it up, and it's this whole process, and it's all like somebody wants to buy it and they're like, well, it needs flowers, and somebody else wants to buy it and they're like, it's the wrong color, and then somebody else wants to buy it and they say, oh, it needs a fence. And so finally they do all this work and then they're like, oh, I don't want to sell this house, we love it here. And I was just like, oh, what was all of that? If it had mentioned staging, I would have been like totally blown away.
Your head would have popped off.
Not even a thing that we knew about at that time. But that's how early my sort of connection to house, people, wants, community, like I just was very fascinated from an early age. And then in middle school, I job shadowed my friend TJ's mom, as who was a real estate broker for Century 21 in Idaho Falls. She, took me around and showed me all the things, for a couple days and a career, during those sort of career days. And then after high school, I went to college at Pacific Lutheran, and then after that, I was working for Group Health. I was working in their advertising and marketing communication department. I was a project manager there, and it was really just one of those weird things where I woke up one day and I said to my boyfriend at the time, I said, like, I remember I had this passion for real estate. I thought that was the direction I was going to go. What happened to that, and how do I tap back into that? And he
Mm.
said, well, you should talk to my friend Corey because that's what he does. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I went to lunch with Corey. Corey, I sent in online inquiries to John L. Scott and Windermere and Coldwell Banker Bain. Those were the big three at the time. This is 2002, by the way. And I immediately was in contact and in motion for this career change. When that started, there were such different options at the time. And Coldwell Banker Bain is the one that got back to me first. And I went and I met with Dick Fulton, who was the manager of the Lake Union office at the time. And I just said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd like to do it here. And he said, okay, yeah, go get your license
Step one.
and then come work for us. I said, okay, great. So
Oh,
that was the very beginning.
that was the start, literally.
And it was such a dream come true. I absolutely loved everything about it. But I didn't know really at all what I was doing. But I had the very good fortune of having good relationships with my former coworkers at Group Health who were super supportive. And those first clients came out of that space. And from that, I began to build large relationships. I was 24. I mean, I remember in my interview, I asked Dick Fulton, I
Mm.
said, hey, how old were you when you got into real estate? And he said, I was too young. I was 24.
Just a
I was like, oh,
baby.
yeah, I'm not going to tell you how old I am.
We'll keep
So
that little tidbit.
yeah, well, so he became an incredible mentor. And then, working in that office, I did some new construction work. A gentleman named Michael Miller and a woman named Faye Torgerson were at that point running the new construction side of Coldwell Banker Bain. And they gave me an opportunity to sit site at a couple of projects. And I just began kind of taking whatever opportunity people would offer me to hold open houses and co-list if they'd let me and take their buyers around and sit for inspections and just scrapped it together as best I could to get off the ground. So those first couple of
Mm.
years, that is the thing in real estate. You're either going to make it or you're not really.
It
In those first couple of years, it either catches or it doesn't. You really have a 5-year runway, I would say, if you can afford to make it that long. But in 2 years, most people are statistically, most people don't get past that second year.
that cornerstone piece of starting out, starting on the runway, finding the mentors, because there's some things that you just said that I want our audience to hear from you deeper, and I want to
Sure.
capitalize on another piece of it. Because you went there and you're letting us know you had these great people that, my words, like took you under your wing, or you saw,
Hmm.
they saw something in you saw something in them, you partnered up. I've lost count how many people long before we started a professional and personal relationship that have told me in our real estate community, "Oh, I went to that office because I wanted to follow Todd.
Oh.
Oh, I decided to go to Ensemble because I wanted to be
Mm,
under Todd's leadership.
mm,
Oh, why did I recruit my friend to the Capitol Hill, Coldwell Banker Bain at the time?
mhm.
Because we wanted to be a part of what
Mm.
Todd creates and does." So I apologize for pausing
Thank
you
you.
in your
That is so
flow,
nice to hear.
but you touched on those people for you in your
Mhm,
sort of coming out starting years. And so
mhm,
I just would love to kind of parlay that into, what is that about? I know in your branding and in your current boutique company, which we're going to get to in a second, there are words like authentic and, something new, something
mhm.
innovative. What do you think that is about, that brings that feeling up for these individuals about wanting to come and be a part of what certainly what you're creating now, which we're going to really lean into that in a minute. But you've had an illustrious career. Life didn't start for
Thank
you
you.
2 years ago without Ensemble. So what do you think that is, Todd, that creates that culture and that connection that you've been able to build with folks over the years?
Something that I think reflects a lot of my own perspective on my lived experience through real estate. So it was always about relationships. I really believe that everybody can match a technology. Any company that runs out front and says, we've got a thing no one else has, someone else will have it.
In
And then
5 minutes.
they'll
Yeah.
yeah, they'll have it and they'll package it and then they'll resell it and we don't have to build it ourselves. We can just buy it from somebody else. And so what we discovered in real estate is that everybody's trying to make a claim that they have the things that everybody else has. And so they're scrambling in what develops as this sort of sea of sameness. So the only true distinction that you can create in most models, which is what my mission was when I was managing for Global Banker Bain, was to build a community that was more tied in, more distinct than whatever the services and tools and resources were, right? You wanted all those things to be the best they could be, obviously. You need competent staff, you need functioning software and processes. But at the end of the day, the most important thing you build is the community, and you have to listen to the community in order to build the thing that they want.
Hmm.
So that became my North Star, was give them a community that supported them, encouraged them, protected them, and enabled them to feel that if they were feeling isolated, they had a port in the storm. Because
Right.
real estate, interestingly enough, for all the caricatures of these super social creatures who are out having a great time and holding open houses and throwing parties or whatever it is that people perceive our jobs to be.
Thank you,
Uh,
television.
yeah, thank you. Is actually incredibly isolating. You
Mm,
are an independent business owner who
such a good
has
point.
partnered up with a brokerage, but at the end of the day, your success and your failure feels like it's your own
Mm,
unless you have people to share it with who can understand it and help support you in the low points and maybe prop you up in the high points, but also keep you a little bit grounded. So I
mm.
think what you're referencing is this sort of sense that we wanted to create a center point, an energetic center point for people's business that they could tie into when they needed fuel.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I just feel like I went to church in all the best ways. So thank you. I feel really good. Like that's just that is a thing. That is the thing we are all looking for. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm speaking from an 11-year tenured producing sales real estate broker. You nailed it on the head. Like, it has so many wonderful, energetic, rewarding things. But to your point, when it's hard and when it's not going well, you do feel like an island. So I've never heard it explained that way, and it's perfect. So I want to touch on that really quick as well. So us in the Seattle market and even nationally in real estate would have to be living under a rock with our ears plugged to have not have heard the excitement and the news and the press about this very cool concept that you have created and that you are building. But I want to share for our listeners, during the launch of Ensemble, your company, I was actually in a PR and a communications director role for a locally owned corporate real estate company called John L. Scott. And why I'm underscoring that is I don't think I could get through about a week and a half of my work week in that role, doing my job in that role, without seeing this massive press and articles about this guy named Todd and this brand called Ensemble. And for those listening that know our industry, and even if they don't, if they choose to look you up and study your lane and your success further, these are publications like Thousand Watt, Riz Media, Seattle Agent Magazine. These are publications in our lane that really spotlight and showcase some incredible talent. And so I just want to take us back, like
Mhm.
literally me sitting at my work desk going,
Mhm.
oh, this is cool. Who is
Mhm.
this guy? What's he up to over there? His audacity is amazing. And I want to know who this human is. So that being said, talk to us a little bit about this concept of broker owned co-op. How did you bring in this heavy hitter player called 1000 Watt? Who are
Mhm.
they? So
Mhm.
just really thinking through the lens, Todd, of folks on this podcast that are not in real estate, that are going to be like, what's all that? Kind of give us a little bit of a storyboard or a whiteboard of how this all came up in your life.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It is I really enjoy thinking back 2 years now, not even fully 2 years since we've been a live brokerage, but it was right at this time in 2023 that we were doing this work. And to whatever way I can make it relevant for people who aren't in real estate, I will just try to tie that in because it's hard to step out and start something new. But I was at that age in my mid 40s where that's kind of the age that people tend to do these things statistically. I think most founders are like 45 years old on the dot. And I had been in a very satisfying position for 20 plus years. I had started out in real estate as an individual broker, and then I joined a team. I had two teams in my span there that I absolutely adored working with in partnership. And then I moved into the management pathway and then became a manager and had the absolute good fortune of the counsel, mentorship, and trust of the senior leaders at Coldwell Banker Bain who said, we think you have enough potential that we want to put you in the captain's seat at our evolving flagship office in Seattle, which included building out a new office space that was 6,000 square feet and finding that space and designing that space. And they really gave me enormous latitude and all of that to say I had a really good thing going.
Hmm.
And some changes began to take place as the company got larger and larger and was ultimately acquired, where the focus of leadership shifted away from partnership and more into a growth and expansion mindset. And because I had spent so many years building relationships with other leaders in the community, other brokerage owners, brokerage managers, senior producers in these offices, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go to their people and say, I also absolutely adore Jane, but don't you think it would be great if you left her and came to work for me? That wasn't work I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be focused on my belief always, which was if you build something great, people will find it and the right people will come to it and it will take quality over quantity. So that's the background. As I decided it was time to leave that structure, that organization, and looked around, what I found was that most of what was available looked a lot like what I was leaving. And as much as I respected other companies in our area and I met with a lot of them, there wasn't a place where I felt like what I would be stepping into was going to be fundamentally different than what I was leaving. That the existing models of real estate brokerages have been falling behind and aging out since the late 80s. That through the 90s and 2000s and as franchises grew and these companies got bigger and bigger and bigger, layered and layer and layer developed, and the relationship between leadership and the people doing the work, serving the clients, became more and more transactional. And nobody did that on purpose, I don't think. Maybe a few later in the world, but I don't think the companies, especially our local ones that got bigger, intended to lose that sort of core DNA of partnership and relationship with the agents doing the work. But nonetheless, here we were. So I thought back over my career to the number of things that I had hoped for, wanted, considered as an agent, as a broker who was selling, and couldn't ever quite seem to figure out how to do or get. And partly that's because at a large company, you're serving so many people in so many places that have such differing needs and priorities that you have to kind of just stick with the stuff right in the center.
Yeah.
So I think as we move to this idea of what was it that got me started. And I realized that even if people really loved me as a manager or as a leader, I was very involved in many areas of real estate at the time. It wouldn't be enough to do the same thing and just put Todd Shively in front of it. Todd Shively Real Estate might sound fun to Todd Shively, but it isn't. It's not enough for just a random individual to go out, no matter how much their people like them, and ask them to give up so much that they've known that works to totally disrupt their own business flow to come work alongside me if what I was offering was the same set of systems and tools and culture and structure that they already had, right?
Right.
That was going to be a very small company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also knew that a lot of people, when they start their own independent brokerage, because unfortunately there aren't very many of them left in our marketplace at all. Most of them got acquired or are intentionally small. Like the middle brokerages are just almost non-existent, and many of them were acquired specifically by Compass, and that was part of their model. That's what Compass did, and those companies decided to sell to them, and that is what it is. It's just that it left a void in the marketplace. And so there's really just a handful of independent brokerages. Now, independent brokerages have this challenge, which is that they're often of a size that they can't offer the same resources that the larger brokerages offer simply from their scale. And so then therefore they can't necessarily charge enough because they have to use price as a competitive advantage to get people to move. And then they end up in this circle where there's just not enough revenue, and therefore there's not enough services, and because there's not enough services, there's not enough growth, and without the growth, you don't have the revenue, and it just kind of becomes a trap.
Snowballs from there.
Kind of snowballs. So I knew that was going to be a thing. If we were going to create something different and it was going to be really good, that we would have to be honest about the cost.
Yeah.
Now, no one is going to pay Todd Shively Real Estate that I've already identified as different, which is, we're going to get to how that's different, but I knew it had to be, and I knew it had to cost a lot to do it and keep it small if that was the goal, which was my target. So I went to 1000 Watt. 1000 Watt is the absolute thought leader and industry icon in the real estate marketing space. And I didn't even really know that. People had told me over the years, you need to follow 1000 Watt, you need to be on their newsletter, you have to kind of be aware of who they are. But I just didn't understand for sure. I didn't understand the magnitude of their influence. And then I was having lunch with my friend Diane Terry, who's a broker at Windermere and a coach. She's a wonderful human being. She said that she's going to go to this conference in Portland called Turn On in March of 2023. And it was put on by 1000 Watt. And I went home and I looked up Turn On. And in that process, I discovered who 1000 Watt was, which is exactly who I was looking for. I just hadn't found them
yet.
I didn't know. So you asked about how I got connected to them. That was the door that I walked through, and I sent a message at like 11:30 at night into their online inquiry form and said, "Hello, my name is Todd, and I'm starting a real estate company, and you seem cool.
Can we be friends?
Can we be friends?" And I got a message back. I almost didn't expect to be honest. I got a message back, and they said, "Well, let's set up an appointment for you and Brian Boero, our CEO." Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I met on a Zoom with Brian, and he said, I kind of outlined what I was thinking about with this company. I said I wanted something really small, really expensive, service rich, where the brokers have enormous influence over the decisions that are made for them. And I want it to be a not-for-profit. And he said, "Wow, that is absolutely incredible." I don't know if he used the word incredible, but what he did say, which I have not forgotten, he said, "I absolutely love that you are going north when everyone else is headed south." And
wow,
then he said,
that just gave me chills. You must have gotten chills when he said that.
Yeah,
That's a pivotal storytelling moment.
In that brief time, before I had met him, I had researched and understood who he was. To even have the space and time with him felt really special. And then to have him so quickly understand that what we were trying to do was so unique and so special. And that really was counterintuitive for a lot of folks. So I love that.
Mm.
And then he said, I don't really know how to say this, but we are expensive. I said, no, I got it. I planned
You're
for
like,
that. I
yeah,
planned for
duh.
that. And then he dropped out a couple numbers. I was like, yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah,
I understood. That's
yeah.
what I'm
You picked
expecting.
your face off
Yeah.
the floor and said, "Let's proceed."
I mean, thank God, right? Because otherwise everybody would be using it. So that became that first step of that brand development, and we engaged with them quickly. And at that time, it was just my husband and I. In fact, we really lived in isolation. We kept this thing a secret from everybody. And we referred to it in code, the development of this thing, as Project Davenport. And so
Oh,
we had come up with the name. We began working on the branding, but it was kept in a total isolation chamber. And working with the 1,000-watt group, we just got to this place where they developed this absolutely incredible brand. And the reason for all of that, and then I'll put a pin in this and you can maybe redirect. The reason for all of that is that Todd Shively Real Estate, or whatever it was going to be called, with all these great ideas, and even with a super strong service foundation and all the pieces put together, still couldn't look like a startup. It couldn't look like most small brokerages end up looking when they're
mm,
getting out the gate. And it's like bold or italicized text, like with a clip art of a skyline or something behind it. People, they can't leave good marketing and good brand recognition and then step into this void, right?
right.
So that's why we made that investment up front. A
Mm,
lot of people would have said we did it the wrong direction, which is that you get the company, you get the foundation going, start generating revenue, and then you worry about your brand in a couple of years. And I knew what I
mm,
would need, which was I have to be proud of it if I'm going to move to it
mm,
day one. It cannot
right.
be the promise of something in the future. It has to be the reality now.
Wow, that's powerful. Like, whew, let me just process that for a minute.
That was a lot.
Very well, very on as far as I'm gonna have you explain and go over very high level, 37,000 feet, what the point of difference is. I mean, certainly you've explained it from a marketing quality, uniquely different, standing out standpoint. But for those listening that are in the real estate lane and for those that aren't, just giving us a little high level of how Ensemble from a sort of structural behind the scenes standpoint is different. But before we go there,
Sure.
you know, leading with that on purpose mission is so thoughtful and unfortunately so unique. I mean, that's the thing. You just called it out is yes, you need to build it and they will come. And we know whether we've individuals have started big or small companies or being onesies your whole career, that there's all those cogs in the wheel. But you said something so important is you knew you had to go to the best to attract the best. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
using my words, but that's
Mhm.
really what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Even with your reputation, even with this testimonial I just gave, people all over
Mhm.
town are telling me they went to A, B, and C because of this guy named Todd.
Mm.
So that is such an important message from a branding, marketing, intention standpoint. The other thing you said that I want to underscore is quality over scale.
Mhm.
You've said that a couple times.
Mhm.
That's a big
Mhm.
deal
Mhm.
because I think it's so easy in all industries, but in this one, you just said it. The middle is gone away, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to get political here, which I do on every episode. I kind of can't help it. But it's like, it's either, the mom and pops are still hanging out if they've got the thing and the special sauce, and nobody can do it on the street corner like them. And that's why people come to them. And then there's the big conglomerate, right? So, I mean, this is a conversation that we can take into any lane of commerce and business right now. But that was so important that you explained that to us. So then in comes Todd. What is the ensemble model? Like you've got this stunning award-winning website. You look like you've got some slick, successful, tenured,
Mhm.
really good reputation brokers on that roster. I've studied them all. So what's the big deal? Like, what are you doing different? Tell us about that.
Well, the first thing is, as I mentioned, understanding the economics. I don't believe that you can create the best real estate brokerage if you have to take anyone and everyone that comes along because you're trying to treat everybody like a revenue generator. That's a problem. That's the impact of 40, 50 years of real estate models that depend on a percentage of income coming in from the agents, what we call a split, to sustain the finances. That in and of itself works. It's just that in the competitive marketplace that we've got, what the brokerages were able to charge over time didn't keep up with inflation.
Okay, I just want to touch on that.
Yeah.
So, number one is what they have historically been charging
Mhm.
over time, over
Mhm.
tenure, has not been able to keep up with
Mhm.
the resources and things that the
Mhm.
brokers are now demanding in today's market. Is that what I heard? I just wanted to make sure I'm processing
That's
that.
exactly
Okay.
right. So, and as an example, when I started in 2002, we had a split that was 50%. So half of everything that I brought in through commission was given to the firm. And then that capped, and the cap at that time was $25,000. After that, I kept the lion's share of it. In 2022, so 20 years later, the same company was doing the same split, but the cap was up to just under $30,000 at that time. Inflation, that $25,000 in 2002 was the equivalent of 44,000 and change in 2022.
Hmm.
So the brokerages should have been charging just to make the same dollar 44,000. They were more than $15,000 behind, right?
Ouch.
And so the
Yeah.
way to close that gap is to hire more and more brokers, right? And the reason they weren't able to keep up is because brokers have this thing where they want more for less all the time. And
N-
sure,
no,
sure,
no,
like,
you didn't
you
hear
know,
it here.
well, I hate to break the news,
You
but
didn't hear it on this show.
they're practical people. They're running business. They want to keep their costs low and their services high. And so not only are the brokers and the brokerages not bringing in as much as a percentage per individual, they are also being asked by the brokers and the agents to give them more and more services like they could find across the street. And by God, I can find it for $1,000 cheaper across the street. And you better know I'm going to go there if you can't figure this out. And so that suspension of economics became this challenge for the brokerages. That's the history. So, how fundamentally we're different is I said, in order to give you the absolute best of what you want, highly paid, highly skilled staff, myself, our operations manager, our transaction manager, the absolute gold standard in every single software from websites, CRM, back office, every single thing that you touch, marketing materials. If you want all that, you deserve all that, you got to pay for all that. And in order for us to continue to be at the front of where our values are and sponsoring things and being philanthropic and throwing great parties and having a good time and having a certain level of luxuries within our experience, which people want, then you're going to have to pay. And the way you're going to pay is instead of us taking a percentage of all of your income over the year, you're going to start the year by writing a large check for the entire year. And nobody's done that as far as I know. There were some models that were, you pay a percent, you pay something every month, but this was not every month. At the beginning of the year, you write a whole check for the full year. But here's the catch, or not here's the catch, here's the gift,
Yeah.
which is that every one of those dollars goes directly back to you in services, staffing, or savings for future opportunity. So that's the co-op idea.
That is the concept.
You put all of the money in one pooled account from the start. And because we have the money in the bank already, we can invest confidently in resources. Another one of the things that's really different, not unique, but different from a lot of the smaller brokerages, is that allows us to fund me as a non-selling manager. So I don't sell real estate anymore. I still have
Right.
contact with my people, and I
Sure.
bring those folks into the firm as clients, and then other agents and brokers here help them. But I don't sell, and so I am exclusively available as a resource, which is really important. And it's very hard for smaller brokerages to pull that off, right?
Mm.
Often their leadership has to often sell because that's just what the economics of it. But as an owner and founder, the other thing I said is I will get paid a salary that is commensurate with what the middle of the pack of our brokers are making. That's how we establish what my salary is. It's the median of what our members are making. And I will not get paid on profit. And that's why we went with the nonprofit model, which is that all of our costs are fixed and no one's ever in a position to say no to something because it might benefit them personally.
Mm.
So we take all of those resources, all those investments that people make at the beginning of the year, we put them in a pooled account, and we know what the budget is, and we spend from that. And we know, and our target is not to end up with a bunch of money left at the end that we hand out to everybody, which was actually my original idea. Whatever we don't spend, we'll just give back to people in dividends. But that was going to limit our vision. It was going to be a creative block if we were constantly trying to figure out what to cut so that we could make a little extra money at the end of the year. And so we got rid of that, and that's before we even launched, to say we're just going to be not for profit, and everything that's left over just goes into savings so we can do something with it in the future.
You know, you touched on something for our audience that takes from this episode, and again chooses to, be it a broker, be it a business person, be it a somebody that stays at home and cares for their kiddos. If they choose to look you up and investigate further, you touched on something because you're talking about, my words, kind of like using the resources at the end of the year to best benefit the broker owners and the brand, as opposed to pooling it. And what it makes me think of is when I've watched your Ensemble Instagram and
Mhm.
your social and marketing sites that
Mhm.
you're building, animating your company.
Mhm.
You guys do so much for the community. I mean, we're going to get to affinity groups and the alliance and all that in just a
Mhm.
second. But I mean, it's give back. We're going to this event that raises money for, unhoused individuals. We're going to this
Mhm.
thing that's talking about trans and, gender affirming support in real estate. It seems sort of endless, let alone it looks like you guys are having some damn fun over there. I'm sorry. Like, hello, that's
Yeah.
not a bad thing to do as a culture and a community. But I just wanted to share that with our listeners because I see evidence of it. So
Yeah. Thank you.
you're actually out there doing it. So that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like,
Yeah.
do we want to pull up all this little extra, or do we want to actually lean in and use it in like a 12-month calendar year, right?
Yeah, 100%. And we do have built into our budget. If you go to our website, if you're interested in how the brokerage works, we have a page written for brokers, which is, I think, it's the Join Us tab, and it kind of lays out how we spend our money, and you can see exactly how our money is allocated. And part of that is fun and philanthropy, and we actually have a term that we use called funantropy,
I
and which
love that.
means that every time we have fun and do something, then we donate as a result. So when we had our industry mixer in Pioneer Square, for example, at Dargolinos, we had a great evening, and we had people from many, many brokerages come, and they invited some of their favorite service providers, and we had food and drink. We had a great party. But we also, as a part of that, donated to the Pioneer Square Association. So when we had a movie day, and we all went and saw Willy Wonka when it came out at Cinerama, but we also donated to SIF as a part of that. And then
Mm.
we went to the SIF opening gala for the film festival. Then we donated additional money into that. Every time we do anything anywhere, we give money to that organization, right? So
Um,
that's just part of it.
That's you need to trademark that word. Like, that's just so
Philanthropy.
perfect. It makes so
Yeah.
much sense because you're getting out there, and real estate brokers specifically have this really cool ability to touch lives and get
Yeah.
in the community and be the
Yeah.
glue and be the connector. So what a wonderful way to be giving back. That's just cool.
Yeah. It just makes sense. Community is one of our core values, and we really want to make sure that we aren't disconnecting ourselves from the lives of the people around us.
Yeah. Well, and just you really graciously directed anybody listening that on your website, like, we can only cover so much in
Yeah,
45 minutes, A,
yeah.
but B, if somebody is really interested in literally seeing a visual and some copy around your model, I'll speak for myself. There's a wonderful video on Todd's
Mm.
Ensemble website. I'm very kinesthetic and very visual, so everything that any way I can be told something in stories and pictures, I'm gonna get it 1,000 times better. So it's a really, really great illustration of what you're building over at Ensemble.
I love that video. It really captures this moment of time. We were developing it again right 2 years ago. We had the name, but we didn't have the branding from Thousand Watt yet. We were really running things out of order, right? And we built this animated video and hired this incredible creative artist, Monica Parsons, who developed this piece. And then we found the audio and this Rupa, this absolutely phenomenal voiceover artist from London. And we put this whole thing together, and we didn't even have the branding yet. We didn't know what the colors were. We didn't know what the logo was. And for the reveal event that we ended up doing, like it was like the night before when we got the logo files and dropped it in. But that video, and that, by the way, those videos are a major investment as well. But
Yeah.
it's the sort of thing that I knew needed to be out there. We needed to have that kind of quality of presentation
Yeah.
in order to really show that we were serious about this. And that video captures that, really sort of that vision from that moment. And watching it now, it is so phenomenal how little has changed from that. Like that was really just a statement of intent, if you will. It was like a promise of something. And now when we look at it, we're just constantly like, how did we actually get all of this to happen? And how is this really true? You know, like, have we not compromised on this stuff?
Totally, and I just took a visual dive myself, and I'm like, I could just see you, like, back alley garage, pulling this all together going, "What the hell? How is this
Oh
gonna
my
work?"
gosh.
But here's the thing, I'm gonna say I'm your target audience, and I mean it in this way. I am a highly visual person. I have a marketing background. I have a sales background. I come from the
Mhm,
fashion world. I worked
mhm.
for L'Oreal, and I don't mean in a judgy surface way. It's like things need to look good, right, balanced, and packaged. Like
Yeah.
I'm bananas about that. And so I'm personalizing it for a second just to say,
Mhm.
for our listeners, is that video is phenomenal. To all your point, I mean, it sounds good, it looks good, it's enough whimsy and lightness, but yet it gets to the heart of the model. So anyway, I loved it. I think you did a great job.
We'll take all the clicks because it costs us enough
Yeah,
to
you're like,
earn
"Bring
it.
it on. We'll be
But
paying
I
for that
do,
till we're 100."
yeah. But thank you for that, because I am a highly aesthetic person as well, and those things do matter. And sometimes those things are difficult to argue for. And I think that marketing, brand, visual storytelling, brand identity, those things really get marginalized by people who don't really appreciate them. And they seem like easy things to cut. And for me, when you begin cutting away at the things that are unique and beautiful and really tell a complex story, then you're just on the path to sameness again.
Right, right.
And
You want
so,
something great. You want
and
something that feels
you want
great.
something great. Everybody wants
Yeah,
something great. And
yeah.
what we have is fine is a really common imagination killer in a meeting.
Right, right. It's like,
Well, what's wrong with it? If you
yeah,
can't tell me specifically what's broken, then we're not going to authorize you to improve it.
yeah. This
It's
is
like,
highly
that's,
underwhelming is I think a
yeah.
term I've used many times in business and life and
These
everything
things
else.
can't stay static. That's
No,
not what marketing is. That's not what
no.
storytelling is.
Well, that being said, I was thinking when I was curating some of my questions for you, Todd, this is one that I do not want our time to miss. And I've asked it on a few other episodes. With your visionary sense and this really exciting model of co op owned boutique brokerage, downtown Seattle, really, there's a couple things you said. It's not about recruiting, and you've said this in a couple personal times out we've had socially and in some business talks, is it's not about running or moving away from something. It's what are we going towards?
Hmm.
What
That's
are we
exactly right.
desiring? What is our growth? trajectory, need, want, and desire. And I really am so lit up and inspired about you and what you're doing. But tell me a little bit about that, because you've said that to me a couple times just as colleagues talking. What does that mean
hmm
to you?
hmm Well, there's two things happening there. Loving something and leaving something are not incongruous. Like you can hold both those things. You can say, I no longer want to be in a place, even though I really love it. And when we're talking to people who are interested in coming to Ensemble, we do want people who are coming to us for what we are, not because they want to get away from where they are.
Mm,
So that is what that, running towards something instead of away from something. And
mhm.
that's part of why our interview process, our candidate process, when someone comes and says, hey, I'm raising my hand, I'm interested in Ensemble, I love what
I
you guys
saw
are
the
doing over
video.
there. I saw the video, I watched it 5 times. Um, when someone comes to us and says that that's where they're at and they're thinking about it, we have this really stretched out process. And that is intentional because it allows us to avoid somebody's emotional moment where they're just feeling resolvable frustrations. Right. And so in my old life, when somebody came into your office and said, I'm interested in making a move, often the goal was to make that happen that day or within a week because it was all about momentum. And if they are unhappy now, let's catch them while they are. That is not bad, right? That was not poorly intended. It's just that often what you discovered after the fact that was the problem was not what they were leaving.
Mm.
They brought the problem with them.
Ooh, I'm getting those chills
you
again.
know
I'm
and
getting those
so
chills.
and so for us it's let's really get to know people. Let's make sure they're not in an emotional decision making space. Let's make sure that they can demonstrate that they understand the good and what works about where they are,
Mm,
because a really successful broker can make it work kind of wherever, right? But it becomes about satisfaction and happiness, and it will hold them back to be in a place that isn't energetically aligned, and it does not, and they are not feeling supported, but they can isolate themselves or find their own little pockets of community where they can still do well.
right.
Maybe not as well as they could, but they can still do well. So I want people that are making it work where they are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what all of us agree that is
Yeah.
important. So that when they say, I like what I've got, but it's not that, then we can really build on something, right?
Yeah.
So we take weeks to go through that process of vetting a candidate. And at the end of that process, every single person is interested. I have, as a part of the model, given up hiring power. I do have the authority to say no,
Yeah. You
but I
think?
don't have the authority to say yes, right? So
Mm,
it's not up to me who we bring in, it's up to the members. So
mm,
once we get through the first screening and then they have conversations with some of the members, there's multiple parts here. But the last sort of stop is that anybody who's interested in joining comes and we do what's called a fireside chat. And the candidate sits with me at the front of the room, and all of the members are in the room, and they take that hour and a half out of their day to gather and have this conversation. And so I sort of guide a conversation. Tell me about this story and this history and your what your experience has been here and there, and what you do in your community, and how things are for you, out in the world writ large. And then they field questions, and it's a conversation. It really is a
mm,
conversation.
yeah.
And then we agree that we're not going to vote on whether this person's a match or not for a week.
Mm,
And that allows us to put space into the process for things to percolate up after. We don't just get caught up in the moment either, because after all of that, we don't want to just get caught up. And so we may take that time to explore other things that this person's talked about, to verify or to get additional questions. They might have things that come up, but we give this additional space so that when we do vote, is this a yes or no? Then we feel like we've really made a solid decision, because we don't want to bring somebody in as an experiment.
What a clear, controlled, on purpose process. And as I was listening, hanging on every word you just said, going on that visual journey of the fireside chat and reminding everybody listening when Todd keeps saying the members, the member owners, he is referring to the real estate sales brokers within
Right.
his organization. That is the definition of the member owners. And what, there's this idea of like, nobody's a victim here, right? We don't have to take on everybody that has a pulse or that looks like a shiny diamond. We're going to really get to the heart of like who these folks are. What a compliment to the brand and to like I said, the culture you're creating. Like, I don't think it gets much more on purpose than that.
It's funny that you should mention that, the sort of on purposeness of it. And this came up, somebody, we get recruiting calls all the time. It's the industry. So people call our agents or our brokers and they say, hey, are you interested in coming over to this place? It looks like you're doing great where you are, but would you like to check out what we have to offer? And one of those questions that they often ask is, well, what is it that you don't like about where you're at currently? And these are people that just don't know anything about Ensemble, really. And our brokers say, well, if there was anything I didn't like, I would just change it because we're the ones that make all the decisions here.
That's so
And
brilliant.
it's just like, oh, okay.
I feel a drop the mic moment, like the other person on the end of the phone,
Yeah,
right? Like,
there's just
oh,
nothing
well,
to say.
that just shut that conversation
Yeah.
down. Okay, I'll go to the next call
If
on
I
my
didn't like
list.
it, I guess I'm a bad leader.
Yeah,
I guess I'm a
right. You're
bad
like,
member,
oh,
because,
that's such
yeah.
a one
Because
that
they
that
really do have that much authority.
yeah,
The members meet
yeah.
every 2 weeks and we talk about all the things and make all the decisions. What are we spending money on? What are our activities? What seems reasonable to
Mm,
expand as a service opportunity? That's just how that works. And I just administrate their wants.
Sometimes in those moments where you're like, God, that was a good one. I got that response down. That is just because it's sincere and it's kind and it's just getting to the point, right? Who wants to waste anybody's time? That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, Todd, I could just go on and on and on. This has been so delightful.
Yeah, how does the time fly? My goodness.
I have learned many things, and I
Good.
certainly know our listeners have. But I do want to close with two additional questions before we actually wrap up this episode of Superpower. Knowing what you know, where you are, all the hats you've worn, and this incredible, amazing career you've built and are continuing to build. Certainly, I always say I won't say the age topic. I don't care about talking about age. I'm just saying I just feel like I'm getting started and getting to know you. I kind of feel like you might feel that way too. And I say that often at this age.
Yeah,
I am just getting started. But
there's
that
so
being
much
said,
ahead.
so much runway. Should we all be so blessed and fortunate? But going back to the question is if you could tell your 24-year-old self, yeah, Todd 24 that was just kind of finding his sea legs and jumping in and had the great fortune of having some really great mentors out of the gate. What would you tell Todd at 24? What would be your advice?
I mean, the very first thing that comes to mind is don't try to be somebody else.
Mm,
That's a real
yeah.
easy thing to do when
The 20s are good for that.
the 20s are good for that. Yeah.
20s
And
are
real
good for that.
estate's good for that. Real
Yeah.
estate's really good for that because you see it kind of encourages that. You see what other people are doing and you think you want to be what they
Mhm.
are, or you meet with clients and you try to be too much of what you think they want. And then you kind of end up there's some benefit to being a little bit of a chameleon. You want to be empathetic. You want to be able to sort of meet people where they're at. That's absolutely true in this career. That's really important. But on the other side, you just need to be honest and authentic about who you are and what you value,
Mm,
and run in front with that. Let your quirks be your quirks. Let your weaknesses be your weaknesses. It's okay, right? This is a very hard job where we expect to be salespeople and therapists and marketing experts and legal experts and home construction experts. We're not experts in any of those
the
things,
list goes
but
on and on.
like it's just like every single piece of the business. Figure out the things that you're good at, things that actually ignite you, that you are like really excited about. I'm talking to my 20-year-old, 24-year-old Todd self, just
Mhm.
stick with the things that light you up and go
Yes.
into those places and find the people that love you the most and then be in relationship with them both personally and professionally.
Mm,
You
love
want
it.
to just be empowered by the folks that appreciate you exactly as you are. And there are going to be so many of them, young Todd. You do
Mm.
not have to worry.
Bravo, bravo. Put a pin in it. Yes, Todd 24. I love that. I am so and I'm taking that with me the rest of the day. Well, we do close down every superpower episode asking if you had to choose.
Mm.
If you were asking me about you, I'd have a long list, but I'm going to ask you if you had to choose one superpower that you feel like you bring to the game, your life, your career, your staff, your co-owners, your spouse, like just your life. Like what would that superpower be for you, Todd?
It is an awesome question. I love that you come at this for everybody. I've listened to almost all your episodes. I have been
Mm.
so impressed with the guests, with their thoughtfulness, with this quality and the caliber of the conversations. You've done a beautiful job with this podcast, and naming it superpower and your clarity that everyone has their own is so empowering, right? It's just like a really cool gift that you've given us here. So it is therefore a weighty question to say what is the individual superpower.
I
And
know.
I like having the confidence to say that I think I have many things that I do really well, and that I'm kind of unique in. I have plenty of
Love
talent,
that.
I guess, which
Yeah.
is a weird thing.
And that's another podcast. I'll have you back for that. I want to hear all about that.
But I think, and especially as it comes into leadership, the thing that really is different about me is my superpower is big ideas.
Mm.
That I really, a friend of mine once said, you're like an idea machine. You just sit in a meeting and like, we could do this and this. I don't really think that we have to do anything the way we've done it before. And I think that it's really important that we figure out why we do things the way we've done them and honor that history. But most of it, there's a lot of unnecessary, just whether it's structure or a lot of unnecessary baggage that we bring into a lot of the things that we do. And that we're just not being as effective as we could. And that we can just break stuff apart, pull the good things out, and then rebuild anew and shed a lot of weight. And so I'm constantly just like, well, what if we did it this way? And what if we did it this way? And how about this thing? And just generating ideas that are different and then doing them. So someone would, if that makes sense in a sentence to say that someone's superpower is big ideas,
Does to me.
then
Makes
I
all
will
the
claim
sense in
it.
the world. It makes all the sense in the
Uh,
world. Well, thank you, Todd, so much. As we close
yes.
down this episode, we are better because of your big ideas. We are a stronger community. We are more engaged brokers, and just the world's a better place with you bringing your big, big ideas to all of us. So thank you so much for your time today.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be a part of whatever it is that you're doing in life.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll make it easy for others to enjoy it too. You can do that by subscribing, writing a review, and sharing episode links with others. Then you'll be my superhero.